The Battle of France is over. Now what? Well, from the time of the Battle of Dunkirk, the internal power struggle between Halifax and his faction, which also still includes Neville Chamberlain. He's out of power, but he's still alive, and he's still a member of the British cabinet, the parliamentary, the Prime Minister's Council that basically runs the country. Churchill isn't very strong yet. And Chamberlain is still Chamberlain, and Halifax is in sympathy with Chamberlain's notion that you don't fight a war when it's hopeless. So, as France is collapsing, the question of what Britain will do comes center stage. Now, there are times in life where being smart and clever and sensitive are absolutely the best thing for everyone involved. But there are also times in life where being stubborn in defense of your convictions, there's nothing that beats it. This is one of those cases. Corporal Hitler has just done in 6 weeks what Kaiser Wilhelm has failed to do in 4.5 years. The French army is destroyed or surrendered or sent east to prisoner of war camps or labor camps. The French nation is amputated, and what's left is run by a German stooge named Laval and his figurehead president, Marshal Pétain. Britain's army has no weapons. Britain's people have no weapons, except a few that are sent by the Americans and new weapons that are being built not nearly quickly enough by the British arms industry. Germany has an air force that has not been defeated once, as it's done amazing things. Germany has an army that has done things that no army has done in all of European history. Conquer France in 6 weeks, conquer Poland in the same amount of time, conquer Norway and Sweden in half that time. Norway and Denmark. Sweden is left neutral to provide Germany with iron ore. The German Navy is smaller than Britain's, but it's very good at what it does. Given the circumstances, Halifax and Chamberlain's faction argue that if Hitler proposes or if they can achieve a negotiated settlement with Hitler, if they can do a deal with Hitler, it's the only path forward that sane people would take. You have to take what you can get. Politics is the art of the possible, and you've got to deal with reality such as it is. So, what do? Well, Hitler makes it known through diplomatic channels that he is willing to offer the British a better peace than he's given to anyone else, and that he will give to anyone else because they're fellow Aryans. Britain can keep its navy. Britain can keep its empire. Britain can keep its government. If Britain agrees that Germany has become the hegemon of Europe, the overlord of Europe, and if Britain conforms its European policy to that of Germany, Britain will retain its independence, not like the Vichy French, who are stooges of the Germans, not like the Poles, who are slaves of the Germans. The British will be junior partners of the Germans within Europe. But in the wider world, they're going to keep India. They're going to keep their empire. This is the best deal Hitler will ever offer anyone. And he's doing it at a time when Britain's navy seems incapable of fighting Germany's air force. You send battleships into territory controlled by an enemy air fleet, and those battleships may get sunk. And if the Germans manage to land troops in southern England, who's going to stop them? Without their weapons, the British Army are just a bunch of well-meaning dudes. The smart money says Britain does a deal with Hitler and surrenders and maybe fights another day at another time. But for now, we respect reality and we acknowledge German supremacy. That is what Hitler proposes, and that is what Halifax recommends. This is anathema to Winston Churchill. Churchill understands Nazism in a very old-fashioned way as being evil. You do not compromise with evil. You do not do a deal with evil. You do not allow yourself to become the junior partner of Satan. Not if you want to keep your soul. Not if you want to keep your way of life. Oh, Germany may let us keep our king and our parliament as long as we do what they say. But they will infiltrate us and they will corrupt us. No, we will not do it. Everyone, the king, the senior leadership in the cabinet, almost everyone was against Churchill on this one. They thought he was being unreasonable. They thought that this was bringing out the worst in him. He was going to fight a quixotic, hopeless battle, and lots of Englishmen will needlessly die for what? For Churchill's vanity? But with the evacuation from Dunkirk, Churchill seizes an opportunity, and he makes a speech in front of Parliament that is broadcast by radio around the world. Actually, let's see if I have the actual. I was going to quote it to you, talking, but I think I have it marked in one of my books. And if I do, I can read you the actual speech. Of course, that would require me to be organized and stuff. Aha! And here it is. So, Churchill says, I say to this House, the House of Commons in Parliament, as I said to ministers who have joined this government, I have nothing to offer but blood, toil, tears, and sweat. We have before us an ordeal of the most grievous kind. We have before us many, many months of struggle and suffering. You ask, what is our policy? I say it is to wage war. By land, sea, and air. War with all our might and with all the strength God has given us. And to wage war against a monstrous tyranny never surpassed in the dark and lamentable catalog of human crime. That is our policy. You ask, what is our aim? I can answer in one word. It is victory. Victory at all costs. Victory in spite of all terrors. Victory, however long and hard the road may be. For without victory, there is no survival. Let that be realized. No survival for the British Empire. No survival for all that the British Empire has stood for. No survival for the urge, the impulse of the ages, that mankind shall move forward towards his goal. I take up my task in buoyancy and hope. I feel sure that our cause will not be suffered to fail among men. I feel entitled at this juncture, at this time, to claim the aid of all and to say, come then, let us go forward together with our united strength. Churchill proves that stubbornness is key and that oratory matters. Smart people wanted to compromise with Hitler. Churchill says no. We shall fight them. We shall fight them on the beaches. We shall fight them in the hills. We shall fight them in the streets and on our landing fields. We shall never surrender. He steals the British people, peace-loving, civilized people who dreaded war, and for good reason, to a long, difficult struggle. If in all the time that our nation Britain has gone forward in its task for 1,000 years. If 1,000 years hence Britons look back on their history, let them say that this was their finest hour, this being the Battle of Britain and the Second World War, standing against evil and tyranny, no matter what the cost, because it is the right thing to do. At the end of the battle, Churchill says, "Never in the field of human endeavors have so many owed so much to so few." And what he's talking about there is the Royal Air Force. When Churchill makes his policy that we shall never surrender, the French claim neutrality. A French tank general named Charles de Gaulle goes to Britain and becomes leader of the Free French forces. The French fleet, according to its treaty with the Germans, sails to North Africa to a place called Mirza Kabir, where they're going to remain neutral. But the British are not sure that the French are going to be able to keep those ships from the British. Remember, the French just surrendered more than half of their country. If the Germans twist hard enough, if they threaten to kill people in Lyon or Marseille, will the French really keep their battleships out of German hands? And the French have some very good ships. So Churchill orders the Royal Navy to appear off of the coasts of the various bases in French North Africa where the French fleet has neutralized itself. At each point, the British admiral signals the French admiral and makes his signal public so that the crews and officers can see it as well. Join us. Come and join us and fight the foe that occupies your land. Join us. Don't sit here neutral while the world passes you by. We need you. Join us. Or if you can't bring yourselves to join us, scuttle your ships, sink them yourselves with honor. But we cannot allow your ships to remain here as possible resources for the Germans. At Mirza Kabir and elsewhere, Vichy French admirals who were chosen for their political reliability more than their tactical skill prove their reliability to Marshal Pétain, Pierre Laval, and Adolf Hitler. They refused the British offers to join them with contempt, and they refused the British offer to sink their own ships with fury, saying, "Come try." Well, the British then sink the French fleet in its various ports along the North African fringe. At this point, something weird happens. The French, who were trying largely to accept their defeat with as good a grace as they can, their defeat by the Germans, many of them, who call themselves patriots or hyper-patriots, become enraged with the British. How dare the British, their former allies, sink their ships, completely missing the point that if Germany got a hold of those ships, no, French honor would prevent the Germans from taking the ships. Well, the British couldn't take that chance. This is war, it's life and death. So one of the crosses that Britain and France have had to bear since the war is that from then until now, there are French people who hate the British more than they hate the Germans. Because unlike the Germans, they didn't conquer France, but they did sink the French battle fleet when it refused to accommodate the British in any way, shape, or form. So Churchill has made his answer clear. Now what's going to happen?